I didn't come to Dry Creek Junction to buy a man. I came for salt, for fence wire, maybe a bolt of calico if the mercantile had any left in navy blue. But fate, I've learned, has a strange way of interrupting errands when your heart is wide open and your past hasn't finished with you. It was July of 1874, the kind of summer where the air shimmers above the ground and the wind tastes like copper. Dust curled in the alleys. Sunlight glared off tin roofs like judgment. I'd only just tied my wagon near the blacksmith's when I heard the commotion in the square. Not the usual kind either. This was heavier, rougher. The kind of noise that feels like it came with a price. I followed it, boots crunching in the dry clay, and as I turned the corner past the telegraph office, I saw him. A wooden auction block. A crowd, mostly men, and at the center, a boy. He stood with his wrists bound in front of him, dirt streaking his cheeks like war paint, a split lip dried with blood. His shirt was torn collar hanging loose. He wasn't crying. That would have been easier to watch. Instead, he stood quiet. Proud in the most tragic way. Like someone who'd already made peace with disappearing. The sheriff's voice rang out across the crowd, flat and tired. Asa McAllister, 19 property of the estate of Harold McAllister, deceased. Owes $800 to Mr. Hollis Drayton. Drayton. The name thudded in my chest like a hammer blow. He stood to the side, leaning against a rail post, gold tooth flashing like it had more soul than he did. Drayton had spent the past 5 years buying the valley acre by acre, with slick contracts and broken promises. I'd watched 3 widows lose their land to him. One of them was my aunt. Now here he was, auctioning a boy like he was nothing more than a debt to be traded. Bidding starts at 100, the sheriff said. 150 barked old Brubaker, the salt baron, who worked men to death near Tasuke. 200 muttered Jim Rokes, whose cattle hands rarely lasted a season. I couldn't move. My hands clenched around my basket. My throat tightened. And then Asa lifted his eyes. He didn't look at anyone else, just me. For a breath. Maybe 2. And in those storm-dark eyes, I saw something I recognized too well. Loss. But not the kind that makes you bitter. The kind that turns you into a ghost while you're still breathing. I know that look. I wore it myself when I was 17 and had to bury my mama under cottonwood trees after the fever took her. When I signed her name on the deed and swore I'd never sell that land. When the banker told me I'd be safer married or poorer. Maybe that's why I said it. 500. It came out louder than I expected. The square went silent. Even the horses stopped shifting. Someone coughed. Another man swore under his breath. And Drayton, he smiled like the devil himself was tucking coins into his vest pocket. The sheriff blinked at me like he wasn't sure I'd spoken English. 500 going, once he said, voice shaky now. Brubaker spat on the ground and stepped back. Rokes shrugged and looked at his boots. Going twice, I felt the weight of every eye on me. I was 24, unmarried, childless, and trying to run a ranch in a land that thought a woman's worth was measured in sons and pies. Now they thought I was crazy too. So the sheriff said like he was trying not to choke on it. To Miss Evelyn Carter. A murmur rippled through the crowd. A few chuckles. One man laughed outright. But Asa didn't laugh. He didn't look away either. He just kept watching me like I'd just rewritten the ending to a book he thought had already closed. I walked forward, pulled a leather pouch from beneath my coat, and handed it to Drayton myself. He counted each coin, slow, grinning wide. Pleasure doing business with you, Miss Carter. Hope the boy don't give you too much trouble. I didn't answer. I wasn't buying livestock. I was buying back something the world tried to steal from both of us, dignity. The sheriff cut Asa's ropes, and he rubbed his wrist, skin red and raw. I noticed he didn't wince. The boy was good at swallowing pain. You coming? I asked gently. He nodded once, followed me to the wagon without a word. We rode in silence. I didn't know what to say. Didn't know if I'd just made a mistake. I only knew that my hands were sweating against the reins and that I could feel his gaze on me every now and then, like it was stitching something broken back together. "You didn't have to do that," he said, finally, his voice gravelly but quiet. "I didn't come here planning to." Then why I thought about lying, saying I needed help on the ranch, saying it was charity. But none of that was true. "I saw someone the world gave up on," I said. "And I'm tired of watching good people get sold like bad debts." He stared at the horizon for a while, then nodded. I think he understood. We passed the town limits, the heat of the desert shimmering ahead of us. Neither of us knew it yet, but that single bid, 500 silver dollars, had just rewritten both our fates. And in some strange, unforgiving way, maybe, just maybe, I had bought a man the world had thrown away. But what haunted me most was not that it saved him. It was that I had no idea what part of me he might be sent to save. Chapter 2. What if the quiet wasn't peace but a warning that came too soft to hear? The silence between us stretched longer than the road home. We rode side by side, the wooden wheels of the wagon creaking over packed red earth dust, lifting like ghosts behind us. The sky above New Mexico was clear and cruelly bright, the kind of blue that made you squint even when your heart was looking elsewhere. Asa sat on my right wrist, raw where the ropes had dug in, still quiet. I could feel his gaze flicking now and then, toward the land, the mules, the outline of the barn ahead, but not toward me. Not yet. That was all right. I hadn't bought a conversation. I'd bought a question I wasn't ready to answer. The ranch came into view just past the split mesquite tree. 2 stories of sun-faded stubbornness, a porch that wrapped around like arms too tired to reach, and a windmill that groaned when the wind remembered to move. "You live here alone?" Asa asked finally. There was no accusation in his voice, just wonder, or maybe doubt. "I do." He turned to look at the house again, lips parting slightly. "Most folks say that ain't safe. Most folks, I said, have never been safe. Just lucky." He went quiet again, but I caught the edge of a smile ghosting his face. It looked strange there, like joy trying on a body it hadn't lived in for years. We passed the cattle pasture, too still. Past the barn, empty, silent. And then I noticed it. Red, my dog, always the first to bark when I came home, wasn't at the gate. No wagging tail, no sound, no sign. The air shifted, not cooler, but tighter, like the world had stopped breathing. "Asa," I murmured, "do you see those tracks?" He did. His eyes locked on the prints in the dirt. 2 sets, deep, different width than your wagon. Led straight to the porch. I pulled the reins gently. The mules huffed and halted. Asa reached beneath the seat and pulled out the old rifle I kept hidden there. He didn't ask permission. That told me enough. "You know how to shoot?" My father taught me before he lost everything else. I gave him a nod. We climbed down slowly. The porch creaked under our boots. That sound should have been familiar, but today it felt watched. The front door stood open, not wide, just enough to whisper, "Someone's been here, and they want you to know it." Asa moved ahead of me without hesitation, the rifle low, but steady. I followed my hand near the knife, tucked into my boot heart, thudding too loud in my chest. Inside, the scent hit first and washed men, cold tobacco, spilled fear. My kitchen had been turned upside down. Drawers flung open, dishes shattered like someone was looking for something that couldn't be cooked or stored. My deeds, I breathed. We moved room by room. My office door was cracked open. The safe untouched, but not for lack of trying. Scuff marks on the floor said someone had tried to drag it. Upstairs, my bedroom had been rifled through, but nothing personal was taken. Not the jewelry, not the cash tin. They weren't here to steal, Asa said, quiet and sure. They were here to send a message. His voice had the calm of someone who'd seen too many things he hadn't deserved. I bent to pick up a fallen ledger, but a hand caught my wrist. His hand. It was warm, rough, gentle in the way only someone who'd learned violence too young could be. "Let me," he said. You shouldn't touch anything just yet. I froze, not from fear, but something else. A jolt beneath my ribs. Not romantic, not yet. Just alive. It had been a long time since anyone reached for me without wanting to own or fix me. We returned to the porch. That's when we saw it, carved into the railing, deep, angry, fresh. Pay up. But worse than the carving were the riders. 3 of them, on the ridge above the far pasture. Same men from town, watching. They didn't care who bought me, Asa said quietly. They cared who you'd risk yourself for. I didn't answer, because deep down I knew he was right. That night, we didn't eat much. The stew went cold on our plates. I lit the lantern early but kept the curtains drawn. Asa cleaned the rifle and didn't speak unless he had to. He wasn't afraid, but he wasn't careless either. You're not just some ranch woman, he said after a while. You knew they'd come. I looked at him across the table. I didn't know when or how. But yes, Drayton's wanted this land for years. It splits his holdings in 2. And now I've made myself a bigger problem because I dared to act like I still own what's mine. Asa tilted his head, studying me. Why not sell? Why not leave? I stood moved to the window. The moon lit up the distant barn roof. Still untouched. For now. My father built this place from nothing. My brother died for it. My mama's buried under that cottonwood tree out back. If I give it up, what do I have left? I turned to him. What do you have left? He looked down, then back at me. His voice was steady, but there was a crack under it like glass under pressure. You gave me a name today, when no one else would. I didn't know what to say. So I walked over, stood beside him, reached out, and touched his bandaged wrist lightly like testing a fire I wasn't sure would warm or burn. He didn't pull away. Later, just before dawn, I heard him outside, mending the fence. Alone. Quiet. The wind picked up, the first real breeze in days. I watched him from the porch, silhouetted against a sky just starting to remember how to turn blue again. That's when I realized the storm wasn't coming. It was already here. Chapter 3. What if the fire was never meant to burn my house, but to uncover the woman I was meant to become? It began with smoke. Not the kind that rises wild and black, but the subtle kind. Oily, intentional. The kind that creeps under your windowsill and wraps around your ribs before your lungs realize they're under siege. I woke before the fire, but only barely. Asa was already at the door, rifle in hand, boots half-laced, breath steady. They're here, he said, voice low, like thunder still choosing whether to strike. I didn't ask who. We both knew. Buck Harrison and whatever pack of wolves Drayton had lent him tonight. The floorboards creaked as we moved, quiet, precise. The way people move when the things they love are on the brink of disappearing. I reached the window. The barn was already glowing embers pulsing like the heartbeat of some dark god. Smoke curled upward like a lie trying to reach heaven. They said it, I whispered. The barn. It's gone. Asa glanced toward the glow. And the horses in there. He didn't curse. He didn't shout. But something in his jaw tightened like a knot cinching around our last hope. Then the second torch flew straight through the parlor window. The glass shattered with a scream. Flames followed, blooming across the rug like red lace unraveling too fast. They're not here to scare us, I said. No, he replied. They're here to erase you. We ran. Through the kitchen, through the smoke. My lungs burned. My eyes streamed. But my heart was stone, now no room for softness. Not while the walls I'd built with my father's hammer were burning down like matchsticks. Asa shoved a table against the door. We have to go, he said. I nodded toward the attic. There's a way onto the roof. We climbed every step, cracking like bones beneath boots. We pushed through the hatch. The night air hit us hard, cool, full of smoke and starlight and fear. The flames below painted the yard in orange and shadow. And beyond the fire, I saw them. 5 riders, one standing tall beside a torch-lit wagon. Buck Harrison. He cupped his hands and shouted like he owned the sky. "Send out the boy. Clara. Send him out, and maybe we'll leave your grave nice and shallow." Asa flinched just barely. "But I saw it. They want you," I said. "Because you stopped being a debt. Now you're a witness." He looked at me then. Really looked. "I'm not leaving you." And for the first time since I bought him for $500 silver and a quiet scream, I believed he never would. We climbed down the back awning. I knew where the root cellar was hidden behind the old corral. What I didn't know, what neither of us did, was that they'd circled. There was a 6th man, unseen, waiting, crouched behind the trough, his rifle raised and his finger itching for Asa's name. I saw the glint of his barrel. My feet moved before my thoughts did. I threw myself into Asa's chest. The shot rang out. It hit the post behind us where Asa had stood a heartbeat earlier. We crashed into the dirt. Dust flew. His arm came down to shield me instinctively. "Are you hurt?" he gasped, voice ragged, terrified. "No," I whispered. "But you were about to be." Asa rolled. "Saw the shooter." He didn't hesitate. One shot. Sharp. Clean. The 6th man fell without a sound, and in the aftermath, in that terrible, breathless pause, he turned to me. His hand was still on my waist, his forehead near mine. "I thought I lost you," he said. I didn't answer. I kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was earned. In that kiss was every thread of tension we'd spun since the day I raised my hand and bought a stranger. Every breath we'd held. Every word we hadn't said. I kissed him because the fire was already claiming everything that had once made me feel safe. And if I was going to lose it all, I'd rather do it with his mouth on mine and my soul finally breaking loose from its chains. When we pulled apart, our faces stayed close. "You're not mine," I said. "But if we make it out, maybe you'll ask if you want to be." He exhaled like the answer had already been living in his chest. "Then, let's live." We ran through fire, through falling beams and coughing walls. I led him behind the paddock to the root cellar, hidden beneath the tangled weeds and a rusted rake. The trapdoor stuck, but Asa kicked it free. Inside was darkness and earth and the taste of old fear. We crawled, bent low, shoulders brushing, breaths loud. Behind us, my home was dying. But ahead, maybe was a place where truth still had teeth. We emerged near the creek 1/2 mile downstream, smoke still clinging to our clothes like memory. The sky was turning blue-gray that hour when dawn forgets what night it came from. I collapsed near the water, my palms shaking, my heart somewhere beneath the ash in my lungs. "It's all gone," I whispered. "No," Asa said. "Not all of it." He pulled the oilskin pouch from inside his coat. "The deeds, the evidence, everything we needed to expose Drayton. And not you," he added. "They didn't take you." I looked at him through soot and sorrow. "I don't know if I have the strength to start over." "Then let me hold it for you," he said. "Just for now, until it comes back." In the silence that followed, something else burned. Not the house, not the barn, but some brittle thing inside me I didn't need anymore. And what grew in its place, a woman who would no longer wait for permission to be fierce, and a boy who by fire and choice had become a man beside her. Chapter 4. If truth has a price, who pays first, the dead or the living? I once believed the dead kept their secrets buried, But that morning, as smoke curled from the blackened ribs of our barn and the air still tasted of gunpowder and regret, the truth rose like a ghost we hadn't invited and refused to let go. Asa and I had barely spoken since the ambush. The kiss between us still lingered in the silence like a match no one dared to strike again. Around us, the townsfolk moved in hushed urgency, some helping to carry water buckets to what was left of the house, others patrolling with hunting rifles borrowed from neighbors. Even the children were quiet. But it was in the quiet that I found the lie. It happened just after dawn in the ruins of my father's study, or what was left of it. Asa had gone in first, stepping over collapsed beams and shattered glass. I followed my dress, catching ash like memory. "There's something under here," he muttered, brushing soot from a warped floorboard. Beneath it, a box half-burned, but still intact. Inside my father's journal, a Colt revolver I'd never seen before, and a folded deed, brittle-yellowed with time, but unmistakable. A U.S. military seal, a signature I recognized as my father's. A deal to sell our land to the army for rail expansion. But the deed had never been filed. My heart beat like it didn't know whose side it was on. "He backed out," Asa said softly. "Your father made the deal, then changed his mind." The why became obvious in the journal's final pages. He wrote of guilt of watching soldiers drive out native families from nearby hills, of second thoughts and sleepless nights. Of me. "Shall never understand," one entry read, "but I must give her the land clean." I dropped the journal, my hands trembling. "They killed him for it," I whispered, "because he said no." By noon, we gathered everyone left in the church. This time, I didn't wait for permission. I stood at the altar, not as a preacher's daughter, not as a grieving child, but as a woman with fire in her chest. "This deed," I said, holding it high, "was never meant to be seen. Not by us, not by them. My father promised them the land, but he broke that promise, and he paid with his life." Gasps, whispers. Then the slow rise of Councilman Rourke from the back pew like a snake uncurling. "Be careful, girl," he drawled. "Accusations carry weight. You're stirring ghosts, better left alone. Is that a threat?" Asa's voice came sharp clear. He stepped beside me, unarmed but unyielding. Rourke smirked. "It's a warning." "Then here's mine," I said. "You tell your friends at the rail company they won't steal this land under smoke and silence. We'll file the story ourselves. We'll send it to every paper west of the Mississippi. You don't know who you're challenging." "No," I said, "but I know who I am now." For a long second, no one breathed. Then old Hester, hands like dried riverbeds, stood and said, "I'll sign her letter." And one by one they stood too. That evening, Asa and I sat beneath the orchard skeletons. The firelight flickered across his jaw, his shirt still dust-stained, torn at the shoulder from when he'd shielded me. "You stayed," I said quietly. "I did. You could've gone. You could still go." "I could." He reached down, plucked a blackened apple blossom, and rolled it between his fingers. "But there's something here that wasn't in me before. And someone." I looked at him, heat rising, despite the chill. "You mean me?" He nodded. "You mean you?" I laughed, the first real laugh in days, and it cracked something open. Then I saw the movement at the edge of the orchard. A flicker, a silhouette near the fence line. We both rose. Asa reached for his side, out of habit, no gun. Mine was still on the table. The figure slipped away. No sound. Just gone. "They're watching," I said, breath hitching. "They're planning," Asa replied, jaw tight. "We drew blood when we made it public." "Then we keep drawing light," I said. That night, we finished the letter. 53 names, and then ours. We sealed it in wax, handed it to young Caleb to ride out with first thing at dawn. I barely slept. Every creak of wood felt like footsteps. Every wind like breath on my neck. But when morning came and the sun cut through the fog like a blade, I was still standing. I stepped outside to find Asa already chopping wood, shirt off, now skin browned and scarred from another life. "You're bleeding," I said, pointing to the wrap on his shoulder. He glanced down. "It's nothing. You'll need that arm." "For what?" "For when we rebuild." He grinned, and my heart did something soft and stupid. As I write this now, I don't know what tomorrow brings. Maybe more fires. Maybe soldiers. Maybe more silence. But I know this truth has a price, and we've started paying it in full. Chapter 5. Was it justice? I pulled the trigger for, or just love, disguised in vengeance. They say the wind never lies in the plains. It howls truth through broken fences and over scorched earth. And that morning, as the sun peeled over the edge of Redemption Valley, the wind was screaming. I stood outside the old blacksmith's shed, the place we had turned into our makeshift courtroom, holding a pistol I never thought I'd lift in my life. It was my father's, and once his hands trembled holding it as mine did now. But today, I wasn't trembling from fear. I was trembling from everything else. Inside, Asa paced slow as a preacher in thought. His boots made no sound against the dirt floor, but I could hear the weight of every step. We hadn't slept. Not after Rourke had taken Sheriff Holloway hostage the night before and declared his own twisted trial at sunrise. Asa wanted me far from the square, but I knew then, as I know now, that some reckonings are born with a woman's name on them. The square. The whole town was already gathered when we arrived, 50 or more. Faces I'd grown up with, twisted by fear or buried in shame. Caro stood at the edge, arms crossed, hat low. I saw Josie crying into her apron. Behind them, the saloon girls looked like ghosts in the daylight. And at the center, Holloway tied and bloodied, but not broken. And Rourke, wearing black like a parody of death, pacing like a preacher of rot. I stepped forward first. My boots kicked up dust and memory. Rourke's eyes slid over me like I was an inconvenience, but Asa moved beside me, calm as a thundercloud before it breaks. "Let her speak," he said. Rourke laughed, motioned to the crowd. "Let the girl speak. Maybe she'll sing a hymn while the law swings." But I didn't sing. I read. From the ledgers Asa found. From the journal my mother kept hidden in the hollow plank beneath her bed. From the marriage certificate that bore no true marriage. From the land deed she was promised and denied. I read until my voice cracked and my hands shook from more than the weight of paper. And then, the twist of fate. Caro stepped out, coat open, revealing the badge he'd kept hidden all these years. "That ledger," he said, "matches the ink and seal I signed off on 15 years ago." Rourke forged my oath. Framed her family. Killed to cover it. Gasps rippled through the square. I felt Asa's fingers brush mine, grounding me. Rourke didn't flinch. "You think the people care about papers, girl. They follow fear. Always have." He drew fast. But Asa was faster. Only Asa didn't shoot. I did. The trigger. I don't remember pulling it, not clearly. Just the sound after. A crack, like time splitting in two. Rourke staggered, blood blooming at his chest like a rotten flower. He fell not just from the wound, but from the weight of every lie finally catching up. Silence held us for a breath that stretched eternity. And then Asa turned to me, gently pried the pistol from my hand. His voice barely above the wind. "You chose truth. Even when it broke you." Aftermath. We buried Rourke beneath the lone sycamore at the edge of town. There was no sermon, just wind dust and the sound of a new page turning. Caro resigned, left his badge on Asa's porch the next morning. Said something about too much blood on this tin. Holloway healed slowly. So did the town. But me? I sat with Mama's journal each night by lantern light. Learned how to rebuild a legacy in silence. Learned how to love in slow, aching increments. The kiss. It came not in the drama of thunder or gunfire, but in the stillness. 1 week later, Asa came to the homestead, said nothing, just handed me a seed packet. "Sunflowers," he said. "Your mama planted them." I smiled, and when I reached for it, our hands touched. His other hand came to my face, rough and careful, and he kissed me, not like a man claiming, but like a man who'd finally found home. Breathes dust. The church still leans east from wind, and the past, though quieter, still walks beside us. But I stand now, not as a girl longing to be loved, but as a woman who chose love even when it came cloaked in pain burden and sacrifice. They called it justice. Maybe it was, but in my heart, it was love. Love with a pistol, a prairie, and a name no longer whispered in shame, but spoken aloud beneath blooming sunflowers. What this story teaches us about ourselves. Sometimes the fiercest battles aren't fought with bullets, but with truth memory and the courage to choose love over silence. Through 5 chapters of dust defiance and daring, this story reminds us of something many of us already know deep down. It's not too late to take a stand, rewrite a legacy, or make peace with the ghosts we've carried far too long. Maybe you've spent years doing what's expected, raising families, paying mortgages, running businesses, or keeping the peace in relationships that wore your spirit thin. And now there's a quieter, more insistent voice asking, what about what truly matters? Mercy's journey wasn't just about saving a boy. It was about reclaiming her voice in a world that told her to be small. And Caleb, he shows us that even those who've walked alone for years can still be surprised by love and choose to protect something fragile, even when it's inconvenient, even when it hurts. The dusty streets and echoing gunshots may belong to the 1870s, but the questions they raise are timeless. Will you speak up when it matters most? Will you choose tenderness over vengeance? Will you let someone in, even when it's safer to stay guarded? This story is a mirror, not of the past, but of the hidden strength we carry through every decade of our lives. You've just heard one powerful story, but many more remain untold. Click to discover more raw, gripping, deeply human tales from the Wild West.